In the heart of America, a town that supplied half the nation's wartime lead was quietly wiped off every map. Its children suffered irreversible brain damage, their playgrounds built atop toxic mountains of mining waste. The poisoning went on for decades while federal warnings gathered dust. What could possibly force the government to erase an entire community's existence? The answer starts beneath the surface, where fortune turned fatal. In 1913, miners broke ground on the rich veins beneath Picher, Oklahoma, setting off a frenzy that would reshape a region and fuel two world wars. Within a decade, the town pulsed with the energy of over 14,000 men working shifts around the clock. The Tri-State Mining District, with Picher at its center, became the engine of America's wartime industry. During World War I, more than half of the lead used by the United States came from these tunnels. Even as new mines opened elsewhere during World War II, the district still supplied up to a third of the nation's lead, a lifeline for ammunition, batteries, and machinery. The scale was staggering. Historical ledgers record more than $20 billion worth of ore, adjusted for today's dollars, hauled up from beneath the prairie between 1917 and 1947. But the method that made this possible carried a hidden cost. Engineers used a technique called room and pillar mining. They carved out enormous underground chambers, leaving thin columns of rock to hold up the ceiling. Over time, as more ore was extracted, these pillars weakened. The earth above became a patchwork of hollow spaces, a city resting on a web of empty caverns. On the surface, Picher looked like a model of American prosperity. Underground, every new tunnel chipped away at the town's future stability. The promise of endless resources blinded investors and workers alike to the risks building beneath their feet. The ground that made fortunes was quietly turning fragile, setting the stage for the disaster that would come decades later. Mountains of pale gray waste towered over Picher, rising nearly 200 feet above the rooftops. They were chat piles, the byproduct of decades of mining. Each mound held millions of tons of crushed rock, laced with lead, cadmium, arsenic, and zinc. The wind carried fine dust from these piles across the town, settling on lawns, drifting through open windows, coating playground swings and kitchen tables. On stormy days, the air thickened with grit, but even on still afternoons, a faint metallic haze lingered over the streets. For families in Picher, these chat piles became part of daily life. Contractors hauled chat to pave driveways and fill sandboxes. Children climbed the slopes in summer and, when winter came, dragged sleds to the top, racing down the powdery surface as if it were snow. The dust clung to their boots and skin, worked its way into their hair and mouths. No one told them that every handful was packed with heavy metals, or that each breath carried invisible particles deep into their lungs. Chemical tests from the era showed alarming concentrations. Lead and arsenic levels in the chat measured far above what any health agency considered safe. Still, the piles grew, reshaping the landscape and the habits of everyone who lived nearby. For generations, the horizon around Picher was defined not by trees or prairie grass, but by these artificial mountains, looming reminders that the town's prosperity rested on a foundation of waste, and that danger was hiding in plain sight. Patty Crockett remembers the day her son's teacher called, worried about his sudden trouble following instructions. At first, she thought he was just having a rough year, but soon, more mothers started to notice the same thing. Kids who had always been bright now struggled to read, spoke more slowly, or forgot simple things. The school nurse began keeping records, quietly testing children's blood for lead. The results were staggering. Over a third, 34%, of local children had blood lead levels above the CDC danger line of 10 micrograms per deciliter. Some tested at double or triple that mark. For families in Picher, these numbers were not just statistics. They explained why so many children stumbled through sentences, why so many needed special help in class, why some stopped talking altogether. Doctors explained that lead attacks the developing brain, causing damage that cannot be undone. Once it is in a child's body, there is no way to reverse the harm. Still, parents were told not to worry, that every town had its problems, but the mothers in Picher knew better. They watched their children change before their eyes, and they understood the cost of living in a place where every breath and every handful of dust came with a hidden price. Official records from the late 1970s revealed just how much state and federal agencies already knew about Picher's growing danger. In 1979, health inspectors collected soil and dust samples from residential yards and found lead concentrations thousands of times above what the CDC considered safe. The findings landed on agency desks in Oklahoma City and Washington, D.C., stamped with warnings about acute childhood exposure. Yet, instead of urgent action, the results were shuffled into internal memos and review meetings. By 1983, the EPA listed Tar Creek, including Peacher, on the very first national priorities list for Superfund cleanup. Documents from that year describe high levels of lead and other heavy metals in soil, water, and air. Still, the response was limited: a handful of soil removals, more studies, and a maze of interagency correspondence. Memos traded between the EPA and the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality in the 1990s show years of debate over funding, relocation, and liability. Each file acknowledged the ongoing risk, but no one set a timeline for moving families or removing the chat piles. The danger was documented, cataloged, and quietly filed away while families remained in place, waiting for a decision that never seemed to come. At a packed town meeting in 2006, an Army Corps of Engineers engineer stepped to the microphone holding a stack of maps and risk charts. He explained that decades of mining had hollowed out the earth beneath Peacher, leaving entire neighborhoods perched above empty caverns. The Corps had just finished a new assessment, overlaying every home, business, and church onto the old mine maps. The result was stark. 159 out of 184 structures, or 86% of the town, stood on ground at high risk of collapse. Some houses had already begun to split, their foundations cracking as the ground shifted below. The engineer's voice was steady, but his message left no room for hope. It was not a question of if the ground would give way, but when. For the first time, officials told residents that staying was no longer safe. The town's fate had shifted from slow decline to immediate danger. Boxes stacked in living rooms, family photos wrapped in newspaper, and the sound of doors closing for the last time. These scenes played out across Peacher as the federal buyout swept through in 2006 and 2007. Relocation agents filed paperwork while mothers packed up childhood bedrooms, their voices echoing in empty halls. Not everyone agreed to go. A few, like the town's pharmacist, refused the offer and insisted they would stay until forced out. On May 10, 2008, an EF4 tornado cut across the southern half of Peacher, flattening what remained of several neighborhoods and leaving 7 people dead. Debris from shattered homes and contaminated soil scattered for miles. The storm ended any lingering hope. Even the last holdouts realized there was nothing left to save. The town's story didn't end with a decision. It ended with a disaster. In 2009, the United States Postal Service erased zip code 74360 from its database. Census records struck Peacher from the rolls. The town council voted to disincorporate, and federal agencies deleted Peacher from official maps, citing public safety and legal liability. But the land itself could not be wiped clean. The Chat Mountains still stand, their slopes untouched, and the ground remains laced with heavy metals. EPA files classify the site as one of the largest unfinished Superfund projects in the country, a place too toxic for rebuilding and too vast for easy repair. A former city official put it plainly: "You can take us off the map, but you can't erase what happened here." Peacher's story is not isolated. Love Canal, Herculaneum, and East Chicago are towns where profit, delay, and denial left communities poisoned and abandoned. The pattern is national. Deletion may hide the disaster, but the consequences linger, unburied and unresolved. Even now, over 500 Superfund sites threaten communities across America. This is proof that Peacher's erasure is not history, but a warning. When profit outweighs public health, entire towns can vanish. The real danger is not what is buried underground, it is how easily we bury the consequences. What responsibility do we choose next?